And we're live. Welcome to Thursdays at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, and the interview series by Dina Redinger and Sharon Weinstein, the co-authors of Healing Healthcare. Healing Healthcare, Evidence-Based Strategies to Mend Our Broken System. We're glad you're here. Welcome to today's show. I am Sharon Weinstein. Dina is not with us today, and I am thrilled to welcome you and our special guest to today's show. Nurses remain the backbone of healthcare, and little has been done or even studied to remedy a system that is clearly in crisis. If this is not addressed, humankind will suffer. Our book, with 26 contributing authors, is packed with solutions to the problems that plague our healthcare systems today. These are the issues that lead to troubling sentiments among prospective nurses. Nurse leaders share their experiences, their thoughts, their evidence, and their strategies to ensure the health of our healthcare. You will find actionable steps for fixing a system that is currently suffering in silence. And we must get this book into the hands of those making the decisions, as well as staff nurses themselves. Before we start today's session, we want to acknowledge you and thank you for joining us. We have viewers from across the globe, so please use the chat and let us know where you're from. You can still comment if you see this in replay, and we will respond. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Kathleen Bartholomew, whose chapter, Voice and Power, is part of our wisdom section. The title alone speaks volumes. An international keynote speaker and culture expert for over 20 years, Kathleen uses the power of story and her strong background in sociology to help leaders create a culture of trust. Her TEDx talk challenges our covert belief that some people are more important than others. Definitely not true. Kathleen has published numerous articles and authored Speak Your Truth, Proven Strategies for Effective Nurses and Physicians. I think it's nurse-physician relationships. Kathleen, you'll correct me. Communication, Ending Nurse-to-Nurse Hostility, Charting the Course, and The Dauntless Nurse, the Hallmark book, all about communication. Welcome, Kathleen, to today's program. We are thrilled to have you. Please say hi to everyone.
Hello, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Sharon.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So tell us, please, why are you involved? Why did you become an author to this book?
I am passionate about the nursing profession, and I'm concerned about the nursing profession. And I look around me and I see wonderful people working very hard, and we're not working in the same direction. So I wanted an opportunity, and thank you for this opportunity to share what I have learned over the last 20-some years. And that is that self-esteem and voice and power, they're all synonyms.
Tell us more about that. Self-esteem, voice, and power, they're all synonyms, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
When you are standing in your power, when you can speak your truth, when you can say what's on your mind, then you are staying in your power. And what we need is for every nurse to stand in their power, and from the front line to the heads of organizations. Unfortunately, there's research shows that there's a lot of risk, fear of retaliation, fear of hurting somebody else's feelings, fear of making the situation worse. And the real problem is that those fears are not just imagined. The reason that they exist is because they've actually happened when people have stood in their power, so they've learned to be silent. But unless we all start to speak our truth and leave the school of fish that we're in and speak up, nothing's going to change. And that's one of the things you hear a lot from frontline nurses is nothing really changes.
Right. That's interesting because in Joe Ty's chapter, he talks a bit about psychological safety and emotional safety. Psychological safety being about the environment, no blaming, no shaming, and emotional safety being about self. And perhaps that truly is what's missing.
Yes.
Well, Kathleen, you state in your chapter that the greatest challenge facing nursing today is, and I'm quoting, myopic embedding, putting out fires and not the root cause. Why don't you tell us about that? We'd love to know more about that. What does that mean?
Sure. I'll give you a metaphor or an analogy will help. researchers wanted to know how worried people are who lived downstream from a dam that the dam was going to break. So they surveyed everybody. And what they discovered was at the 2-mile mark is where the concern was most profound. What surprised researchers is that from the 2-mile mark to the dam, people were less and less worried about the dam. In fact, the people who lived directly under the dam, when asked, "Are you afraid the dam's going to break?" they were like, "What dam?" Oh, that dam. So what they found out is that when you are, as human beings, when we're in physical, emotional, or psychological, let's use Joe's work as well. It doesn't matter. There's not a difference between the physical, emotional, and psychological. When you are in danger, you can't allow yourself to perceive the danger you're in. Why? Because we're human beings. So we put it out of our realm of awareness. So nurses are working so hard, and every nurse has been asked to do more with less every year. So now, like, what does it look like? Lucille Ball in the chocolate factory, we can't stop the conveyor belt. We don't know where to put the chocolates anymore. They're dropping and it's tiring. So, we don't know, but our leaders have got to say, what is causing this? Why is the conveyor belt speeding up and speeding up? And what can we do? And the answer to that is we have to understand that it's not, don't fight retention. Don't focus on retention and all these other getting more nurses in, keeping nurses into the hospital, because those are the symptoms. They're the symptoms of the problem. And the problem is that our structure in the United States, and this is Donna Bedian's research that says structure dictates process, which dictates outcomes. So the outcomes are all that nurses are leaving and they're burnt out and they're overworked, and so are leaders, et cetera, et cetera. You know what they are. So where do these outcomes come from? Don't try to change the process, because what's causing them is the structure. If you have a lollipop factory, it makes lollipops. If you have healthcare as a business that profits on disease and illness, it makes more people with disease and illness. And that's where our attention should be going. What kind of structure will support, nourish, and unleash nursing? Where is the structure? And what I believe is that structure would be a service structure, that healthcare is a service, that it was never meant to be a commodity, to be traded, to be or a series of individual billable transactions with so much bureaucracy that neither physicians nor nurses are. We spend all of our time in CYA charting that people don't read. And the recent study from the AMA was like 50% is copied and pasted. Stop the conveyor belt. Stop the conveyor belt and let's all work together to create a structure, a system. One example could be, what if healthcare was a public utility? What if it was a public utility? Because it certainly is important. There's a big cry for broadband internet to be a public utility, and certainly health is as important as electricity and water and broadband internet. So I think that it's actually the civil rights movement of our century.
And it's interesting that you said that. Excuse me. It's interesting that you said that, because when we start to think about healthcare as a public utility sort of a thing, there's a lot of pressure right now for nursing to be considered STEM. How do you feel about that?
Well, there are a lot of high schools that are actually already doing that. But yes, once again, that is not the cause. I feel great. There's a lot of great programs. I feel great about all that work. But can you imagine if we looked at what the cause was? What healthcare could look like? Everybody knows Call the Midwife, right?
Oh, loved it. Yep.
Right? Okay, so how about Call the Nurse 2024? What would that look like in let's just take one zip code. Let's just flip one zip code from a business to a service. And what would it look like? And I did a pilot in Spicewood, Texas with a wonderful nurse, Candace Escobedo. And that's what we did. We had healthcare as a service. And I cannot tell you how rewarding it is, how rewarding and nourishing it is to nurses to see the difference that they can make. We're just in the wrong place. We need to be in the community, and we work in a system that has different goals. For example, one CFO asked me, he was giving me a tour after a board meeting of the hospital, and he very proud of his 350-bed hospital. And I said to him, "Oh, who's the major employer in your town? I didn't see any industry." And he responded that, well, by far, we are the greatest, employer in this town. And I said, well, what's the plan when the you keep the community healthy and the beds are empty, what's going to happen then? What's your plan for this, structure then? And he looked at me and said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. There is no plan. The hospitals, the way they're set up, they must have business, and the business is sick people.
The business is sick care.
Yes,
That's
the business is sick care. So we have to leave the business of sick care and focus on well care and prevention. So if you could do this in just one zip code, you would do what Bucky Fuller said, which is don't fight the existing system. Stand up a new one that makes the old one obsolete. And just that little pilot that we've done already has given me so much hope. I mean, I see more community nurses in the community and more resources in the community than in the hospital.
Do you think that that's affecting or impacting in any way their ability? You talked about retention. Does that allow them to retain more nurses because it is a nourishing environment? It is something of which people want to be a part?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And do they have numbers to support that, Kathleen?
Do the hospitals have numbers?
Yeah, or the study that you worked on.
Yeah. I do have numbers. I mean, it's not a huge study, but we did take 41 people from a food bank who came in, and we wrote care plans for them. And the nurse practitioner designed the care plan, and then a nurse for 3 months would follow up to make sure that the care plan was filled. And we addressed the social determinants of health, and it was amazing to see the difference that you could make in people's lives. And that is so rewarding. I had trouble getting one nurse to turn in her hours. Like, she's like, this isn't nursing. I'm like, yes, this is nursing. Yeah. I mean, Call the Midwife, where you go into the community, you identify problems. Let me give you a specific example in my own community. I'm a substitute school nurse. The middle schoolers, several, of course, the anxious generation and a lot of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem due to the digital media. But I said to the people in two of our the beauty school, why would you be willing to donate one makeover every month so that the counselors could give them to the kids that need them? But in this makeover, could you focus on their internal beauty and strengths and not their external ones? Not their external ones, external
Good
ones.
Word. Okay. Make your own. Okay.
Right. But I mean, like, that's just one example. Like, what would I do in my own community? I would put a nutritionist in the supermarket in one of the lines so that you could learn that all that yogurt that you think is healthy for your family is not. All that green juice that you bought has 52 grams of sugar, etc. You would be able to learn, and you have to. So this is how we would switch it and create a new structure. So I mean, I just love all the nurses that I'm working with that are very interested in, hey, let's just take one place in America and really all come together to make healthcare a service. And boy, that it inspires the nurses and the people that work there. See, the current system's not aligned with neither physicians nor nurses' values or our ethics.
Right. Our problem is that corporate values don't align with people values. And if they did, the situation would be reversed. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the dietitian in the supermarket, because years ago I participated in the cardiovascular health research project to lower cholesterol. Mine had been 400 when I was only 20 years old. And I participated in this project, and it was probably a 12-week long program, and I had to keep going back and forth. But the highlight of the program was that a nutritionist, a certified dietitian, took you shopping at aisle 18 in Wegmans to teach you how to read the labels. That was an entire session devoted to what does it really say on that label? And what does this really mean in terms of me and my future? It's fascinating that you said that.
Yeah, and nursing is so task saturated. When you look at the sheer number of tasks, over 600 tasks in a 12-hour shift, I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, so you're so focused on the task, and then you're wondering why the heart and soul of the profession is dying and nurses are leaving. I don't wonder at all. This is an inhuman amount of tasks. You know what Florence Nightingale said is we need time with our patients. Our presence, our very presence with the patients is healing. One nurse can get a patient to take their meds and respond and help, and the other can't. One can be more present and the other can't. And I'm worried about the qualities in nurses. When I read, for example, Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation, and look at the fact that our children's biology is really being changed because of the experience of social media and not having enough rich risk behaviors and group behaviors and synchronous behaviors in their lives. I mean, it's not going to get better. The time that you have to look into a patient's eyes is more powerful than any medicine.
Right, right. I always found, even as a young student, and I went to nursing school at age 17, but even as a young student, I appreciated working with the surgeons or the residents who would stand at the bedside, who would wipe someone's brow, who would hold their hand, who would talk to them, who would spend the time and look them in the eye. And that to me was always much more powerful than taking them to some procedure room to do something. It was
Yes.
that connection, that human connection that we seem to have lost.
Well,
And
we
that's
didn't
a
have it
shame.
lost it. Sharon, there's no billing code for it.
Oh,
The
okay.
reason we've
Okay, good point.
yeah,
That's
we
why
didn't
we
lose
don't
it.
have it. No code.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in fact,
Okay.
that's one of the things that we discovered in our pilot is that when you look at your measurements, that if you're going to have a new system, you need new measurements. Why don't we measure decreased isolation, increased connection, increased sense of self-worth? You know, a decrease in lost days at work, an increase in voting because you care. And I mean, why don't we measure, you know, the amount of interactions between the community like a spider web that comes together to support somebody who's in trouble? Or measure the fact that just last week somebody from the community would just call and say, you're our nurse, right? The community nurse. Oh, somebody was discharged from the hospital and we're really worried about them. Can you come? And she comes and saves their life. I mean, because they call. I mean, it's not us. And there's a lot of shame because we work so hard. It's not nursing. There's nothing wrong in nursing,
No, there
except for
isn't.
that we're in the wrong spot. And we have never been in a place where our power, our passion, our joy, and our profession could be unleashed to do what it does best, which is heal people.
Mm-hmm. Powerful statement. And it brings us right back to voice. Can we speak up and can we speak out? Is it a safe environment in which to do so? I want to ask you one more question, and that is, I usually ask about a takeaway, but I was intrigued by the concept of Barbie, if you will. And so if I said to you, Kathleen, what would be a wake-up call for nurses and nursing today? And can you relate that to Barbie and what she might say or what she might think? How would she be involved in that process?
Well, thank goodness that Barbie had Gloria, right?
Yes.
Because it's really Gloria who saved the day. So Gloria came and Barbie was face down. And that's the way lots of people and nurses feel right now, is just like Barbie.
Right.
And what Gloria did is she said, she found a way to wake everybody up. And how she woke everybody up was she, quote, all you do is expose and give voice to the cognitive dissonance. What's the cognitive dissonance? And that's how she woke up the Supreme Court justice. She woke up so how can we wake up people by saying, do you realize that you as a nurse have accepted the responsibility of providing safe quality care for the patient? And then when you ask for the resources that you need to do that, they go, no, you can't have those. Do you know that we're constantly told that there's not enough money for staffing while the CEOs make up to $20 million a year in this for-profit business as you're scrimping and working a double shift and not getting a break? Like, wake up. Somebody is making an awful lot of money on what we're doing. And every single solitary year, Americans get sicker and sicker and sicker. So who's going to say, stop the train? Get off. Nurses need to get off the train and to create a place where their profession can thrive.
Wow. Powerful statement. Very powerful. That in itself is such a strong takeaway. And that in itself is all the more reason why we need to promote the concept of healing healthcare. That's why we need to have this book in the hands of everyone who can read, and eventually everyone who can listen, because it will be audible as well. But we need to make it available. People need to understand what the evidence tells us, as you've so well articulated, and what actions we as individuals and as groups can take to really mend what is broken. And that is so much more than a Band-Aid effect, isn't it? It will
Yes.
take much more than that.
Yes. And you know what? We have the intelligence. We have everything. The only thing we don't have is we're not coming together. And so, I mean, how do we come together as a group? You come together on your unit, or you start where you are right now. There's always like one bad apple or one person. There's not a lot. Most people in healthcare are great, but make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then you create magic. Everyone, that conversation that you thought just wasn't worth it because that person's never going to change. Be bold enough to stand in your power and say, will you stay with me in a conversation until we both feel okay? Because I guarantee you the other person doesn't either. So how do we change? We are the future of healthcare. It is not something that we are waiting for.
Right.
Your every interaction is the future of healthcare.
And we are that change, the change that is so desperately needed. Well, unfortunately, you and I could go on for hours chatting about this, but it is time for a close and an invitation to join us again next week as we welcome another one of your peers to the program, another one of our authors. We're thrilled to have a plethora of brilliant professionals from all across the profession, each of whom has added to the section on workforce, to the section on well-being, or to the section on wisdom. I'm going to take this moment to say thank you, Kathleen, for joining us today.
Thank you, Sharon.
We really appreciate your presence, your voice, your power, your statements. Well done. And we look forward to sharing this video with others. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.